Hunger is a curious disease. It gives you back your own eyes. Man, that is a chilling thought, isn't it? It immediately sets this incredibly dark, almost philosophical tone for the psychological and honestly deeply unsettling literary experiment we're going to explore today. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through our source material. It's this truly fascinating piece of work titled The Hunger Below Zero. And look, this isn't just your standard survival story. It's a purposefully engineered literary triptych that dissects exactly what happens to the human mind when everything essential is just violently stripped away.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We've got a clear roadmap to reassure you that we have a structured path through this beautifully dense literary labyrinth. We'll start with the collaborative experiment itself, move into deprivation as epistemology, look at 3 portraits of hunger, hit the convergence at absolute zero, and wrap up with the counterfeit question.
So part 1. The collaborative literary experiment.
We really need to start by understanding how this unique text was built, because the method itself is just as fascinating as the madness it describes. What's really interesting here is how elegantly the text maps 3 completely different protagonists to their specific environments and classic literary influences. It was uniquely generated as a collaboration between 4 AI models: Max, Claude, Gemini, and Grok. We have Cal McReady freezing out on the Klondike, totally channeling that raw survivalism of Jack London. Then there's Lucien Grave starving in the mechanical belly of Paris, echoing the intense realism of Émile Zola. And finally, the nameless wanderer unraveling in Kristiania, which is modern-day Oslo, by the way, capturing the wildly delirious subjectivity of Knut Hamsun.
To tie all these distinct voices together, there's this brilliant meta-narrative layer. The whole thing is presented as a collection of found documents, isolated journals and loose papers just left untouched in a drawer somewhere. A fictional editor eventually compiles them, acting as what the text calls a 4th aperture, basically a lens that doesn't invent the connections, but simply passes this raw, unintentional triptych of suffering straight onto us.
Moving right along to part 2. Deprivation as epistemology.
This brings us right to the philosophical core of our explainer. See, starvation in this text isn't just about physical loss, it is this terrifyingly generative process. The absolute crucial concept you need to grasp here is aperture. Now, the text defines this not as a person, but as a condition. It's a state where extreme deprivation completely strips away our habitual everyday filters, allowing the universe to be perceived with total, unmediated, and honestly unbearable clarity. It's really vital to note that this isn't some mystic sought-after vision. No, it is a state arrived at entirely through violent physical erosion.
Consider this incredible ground glass metaphor. Out in the freezing Klondike, our character Cal McReady remembers reading about how you have to grind down the glass of a telescope, literally scratching away and removing material from it to make it capable of gathering more light. And this brilliantly illustrates the core idea. Grinding a man down makes him terrifyingly capable of seeing the unfiltered truth of his reality.
All right, part 3. 3 portraits of hunger.
Let's look a bit closer at how our 3 specific test subjects react as their incredibly harsh environments act as a crucible for their minds. Despite being thousands of miles apart, all 3 of these men go through a shared, identical psychological progression. Phase 1, usually the first couple of weeks, is just simple animal insistence. The stomach complains loudly, kind of like a dog scratching at a door. But by phase 2, weeks 3 and 4, that complaint shifts into clarity. The hunger actually becomes a lens that sharpens their perception. Finally, they hit phase 3, the aperture, where the sense of self falls away completely.
So let's see how this actually manifests in their specific environments. For McReady out in the Klondike, the cold is purely thermodynamic. It surgically removes his non-essential memories, literally leaving him to freeze into a permanent feature of the landscape. Conversely, Lucien Grave in Paris views his starvation anatomically. He realizes the city itself is a giant digestive organism, and he's just become the space between 2 teeth, literally a gap for the smallest, least useful particles to pass through.
And then we have our 3rd portrait, the nameless wanderer shivering on the Kristiania docks. His hunger breeds pure delirium, along with this deeply concentrated, hardened pride. He experiences what the text calls the watched and unwatched condition. Basically, he feels simultaneously like the subject of a vast, unseen scrutiny and the object of total universal indifference. And the crazy thing is, both of those things feel completely true in his mind at exactly the same time. Which brings us to part 4, convergence at absolute zero.
As these three men reach the absolute limit of human endurance, we approach this epic zero moment. They're geographically isolated, sure, but their stories are about to instantly connect. So the crucial point is right here. In his freezing cabin, Macready strikes a final match, and in that tiny flame, he instantly comprehends the entire unbroken history of human fire.
Simultaneously, thousands of miles away in a Parisian alley, Grave watches a single drop of fat fall into the gutter. And in that one drop, he grasps the entire, endless metabolic chain of the city's digestion.
And at that exact same moment, the wanderer watches cigarette smoke disperse on the docks, tracking every single particle of it endlessly into the future.
For one impossible instant, all three men are reduced to pure apertures. As the source text beautifully states, through each of the three openings, it was looking with total and unbearable clarity at itself. Think about that for a second. The starving cosmos, for just a split second, looked at itself through these three human lenses.
Now, our final section, Part 5, the counterfeit question.
The cosmic flash ends, the match goes out, the drop hits the mud, the smoke disperses. Let's move ahead and see how this builds into their vastly different final fates when the spring thaw finally arrives. Macready's arithmetic just runs out. He freezes, quietly resolving into the ice right alongside his dogs. Grave, however, is found and rushed to a charity ward. He survives and is refed, but his worldview is forever humbled by the reality of the machinery he once sought to describe. But the wanderer? He simply walks onto a ship bound for an entirely unknown destination, leaving his existence completely unresolved.
Which leaves us with the editor's ultimate puzzle, the counterfeit question. Did extreme deprivation actually strip away the illusions of the world, revealing a profound, unified, metaphysical truth across three separate continents? Or were these simply the desperate, identically patterned hallucinations of starving, dying brains? The text absolutely refuses to answer, leaving you in the deep discomfort of both possibilities. So I leave you with this. The next time you feel hunger, what exactly is it preparing you to see?